Hello and welcome. As usual, we'll wait just a moment or two for folks to log on if they're going to, and then we'll get started. Thank you. I now call this meeting of the South Woodbury School Board to order. In the absence of Director Jackson, we'll turn to Director Greenherron for our land acknowledgement.
Thank you. South Woodbury School District would like to begin by acknowledging that we gather on the ancestral homelands, originally known as Chikolche and Lhutsit of the coastal Salish peoples, on the lands of the Lower Skagit, Tulalip, Swinomish, Snohomish, Stillaguamish, and Squamish, who have lived in the Salish Sea Basin since time immemorial and have hunted, fished, gathered, and taken care of these lands. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and we honor their sacred spiritual connection with the land and water. Please join me in expressing our deepest respect and gratitude to the Indigenous people of this territory and for their enduring care and protection of the land in which we currently occupy and share through the Treaty of Point Elliott, signed by 82 tribes in Mukilteo on January 22nd, 1855.
Thank you very much. As this is a business meeting, we will have a public comment period. If you are in person, please sign up with Ms. Macaro at the back. If you are online, please put your name and location in the Q&A function, and when the time comes, I will read it. Sorry, your name and location in the Q&A function, and then you can start typing your comment, and when the time comes, I will read it. Please remember that these are comments to the board in our meeting in public. In almost every case, we will not respond beyond thanking you for your comments. We'll move on to the agenda and minutes. Are there any objections to approving the agenda and minutes as presented? Hearing none, the agenda and minutes are approved as presented. Are there any objections to the approval of the consent agenda as presented? Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved as presented. We will move on to the public comment period. Are there any people signed up here? Okay, no one is signed up here. I do have one comment online. Gwendy Gabeline, Freeland. I have asked this questions at 3 meetings now, and I have yet to get an answer or information. I know this is not on tonight's agenda. With that said, I have even asked this question at 2 previous workshops where items not on the agenda can be discussed, and yet this question was not answered. I really don't need 5 minutes, but I would appreciate an answer or information. My question is, has there been any discussion on what the plan is in the case that COVID numbers keep going up and the district needs to spread students out on the buses? I know that some buses at times have reached capacity and students have had to ride another bus home. If we have to spread students out on buses, has there been any preparation for having more drivers or buses? Has there been any discussion on how this new setup of one start time that requires a change in bus transportation? Again, I tried to ask this question back in September at the first workshop, but you had guessed at the making it difficult for parents to get an update on the change in transportation. While I'm on the subject of meeting structure, did something change about workshops? I asked because the last 2 workshops where I tried to ask about items not on the agenda, my questions was not answered. I understand that at board meetings, only items on the agenda are discussed, but I thought at workshops, items not on the agenda could be discussed. Thanks in advance. I am going to, with the approval of the board, I'm going to respond to the procedural question there. The board workshops are chances to have a two-way conversation between the board and the community members, board members, and everything in between on items on the agenda. Business meetings are a chance for the community to make public comment that is usually not responded to on any item, any topic that is appropriate for discussion at a school board. That's just the procedural answer for those who might be wondering about when to ask various types of questions. Mr. Pullman, will you take a look at that question and get back to Gwendy at a later date directly?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Gwendy, thank you for bringing that up. We'll make sure that Mr. Pullman gets back to you with the answer to that. Thank you. Are there any other Q&A? We don't have anything else in the queue. We'll give it a moment just to see if anyone else chimes in with their public comment, but I expect that that will probably be it. Okay, thank you very much, Gwendy, for bringing that up and allowing us to speak to that procedural question, and for Mr. Pullman to get back to you with details as appropriate. We'll now move on to new business. We have three action items. The first of which is Memorandum 2324-12, approval of the 2023-2024 school improvement plans. These were the main source of discussion at our last meeting. The administrators did a fantastic job putting these together, bringing in the goals that the school board gave to the superintendent and bringing them down to the building level and the classroom level. And we're very appreciative of that. Thank you very much. And for presenting to us, is there any debate or discussion on this from the board members?
I have a couple questions. First of all, I was absent for the workshop, although I watched the recording, and I echo Director Williford's appreciation at such a thorough job, and seeing how the goals we set for the district flowed down into each building as appropriate for that building. My questions are mostly about how and when the board will get to see the data that is part of these school improvement plans. So two questions. The first one is about iReady, the diagnostic assessment that we use. And it is, do we know how well iReady, performance on iReady correlates with eventual performance on SBAC, the state standardized testing, the one that really counts?
Thanks for asking, Joe. I reached out to iReady's been tracking this as something they wanted to be more explicit about. They're driven by the Common Core state standards, which is how our curriculum aligns to, and then how we deliver instruction. They wanted to take it a step further. And so what they did over the last couple of years is they put together research, and they looked at multiple districts, multiple in Washington, and they are building what's called the projected proficiency. So they're looking at building up a system so that when we go and look into our diagnostic data, we can start to see correlation to how they score in iReady from each subtest to how they might score in SBAC, and then additionally provide intervention or strategies or areas that we might need to target prior to SBAC. There's a system we have called Homeroom that is a kind of our landing zone for the multiple points of our data that does that. But iReady's goal is to be able to take that, give you proficiency predictors, but then also give you strategies to looking at what areas or gaps students might need targeted to meet level 3 standard. So the hope is Issaquah is one of their model schools in Washington State. So this is the first year where they're using it on their platform. So hopefully by the next school year, it'll be more available to anybody that engages in iReady, so that we can start to see that connected to our iReady diagnostic.
Excellent, thank you. And my last question is for the data that is part of the SIPs. Will we get the opportunity to see those metrics disaggregated when the sample sizes are large enough to do that in a way that maintains privacy for students?
Absolutely. And I'll speak just to the high school. I think something that would be helpful too from the board is, how would you like it disaggregated? because there's multiple ways that we can do that. So any thoughts on that, I think ahead of time would be real helpful. Also, we have to remember too, there's some information that I can't share publicly because the N is too small. Whether it's ethnicity, special education, some things like that. So we have to make sure that we're, I think it's 20, has to be over 20, I believe. So just another piece.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, and means the sample size for those who didn't take statistics. As far as guidance, hopefully this isn't a cop out, but I would actually bounce it back to you and the other building leaders and ask you what types of subgroups, like in your gut, do you feel warrant attention, so that we can get the data to back up whether your gut is on the right track or not, and then we can kind of go from there.
Well, and Mr. Patton, you had a list of disaggregations in your presentation, which I thought was a fantastic list, and just wanted to add, I think it was to the income-based and McKinney-Vento, but I think that's a fantastic place to start. The list that you had plus those two.
Yeah, and I think all of us building level administrators have been really paying attention to what our district vision and part of it and mission. And you talk about equities and certain populations and making sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be, achieving at all subgroups.
Yeah, and I think that's why Director Greenhair would put it back to y'all, because you're the experts and you've been demonstrating great capability in that focus.
And I would just add that our focus is a little different. We may have a different subgroup, and I just hope we can definitely get some common subgroups, but there's a couple areas. As an example, we're really targeting right now our tier 2 in math with a really targeted math intervention. So just want to say, hope you're okay with that.
Oh, absolutely. That's why we would want the experts to weigh in.
Yeah, I would welcome different disaggregations based on the buildings. I think that's a great conversation starter for what are we seeing in the elementary school, because that's going to be important as those students continue their academic journeys. And my only other thought on disaggregation is the state provides guidelines on different types of subgroups. So that also may be helpful.
And just for the timing of it, currently our data summit and the first check-in on SIPs, the school improvement plans, is the February 14 retreat and workshop. And then there is a second check-in on school improvement plans at the May 22nd business meeting. Just for timelines.
Excellent. I'm really glad we'll get the opportunity to review the data multiple times so we can see if course corrections are needed. That's all the questions I had. But again, amazing presentations. And I was really, really happy to see them in the meeting recording.
Anything from anyone else up on the?
I'll be really curious to see the results of the wellness survey and then see them with the goals, especially the extracurriculars. I think that'll be a really great way to try to get more student and staff relationships, and how, like, I know for myself, a lot of the teachers that I'm able to go to are the ones that lead the extracurriculars that I do. So I'll be very curious to see if promoting those extracurriculars will expand the responses within the wellness survey.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that extracurriculars build community, that it's so critical for student well-being. Okay, are we all set? Okay, could I have student advisory votes on memorandum 2324-12?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All those in favor of approving memorandum 2324-12, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. The memorandum has been passed. Our second item is memorandum 2324-13, approval of the update to South Woodbury School District Policy 6020, fund balance amount increase. This is something that Mr. Poolman brought up during the budgeting process, that the purpose of the maintaining the fund balance was to cover up a month worth of payroll and benefits, and that the 6 point whatever it was percent was insufficient. So the idea to make it 1/12 of the cost. You have anything to add, Mr. Pullman?
Yeah, I do. There's actually a larger overriding purpose for this fund balance policy, and it's really that it creates an environment where the district is actually forced to make adjustments to the budget on a yearly basis rather than spending down fund balance completely and then have to make those adjustments. So it's a way to ensure that we're doing it in a process rather than in desperation. So we're having to think in advance, say, okay, fund balance is getting down to 1/12. We need to make those adjustments rather than just saying, okay, let's spend everything and then figure out how to do it. So that's, for me, that's the bigger reason why I suggested this in the very beginning before we had the 1/12. It's just that idea that it really does force the district to do better management budgeting on a thoughtful, kind of prolonged basis.
And I really appreciate you making sure that guardrail is in place as you're looking to move out of the position that has shepherded that fund balance for so long. Any other comments, questions, discussion?
Yeah, one question. I just want to make sure we will be in compliance with this new policy upon adopting it. Does the current fund balance have 1/12 of the total budget in our last F-195?
Yes, but there's a little bit of a difference. If you read this, it's the budgeted ending fund balance in the budget process. So that's why it creates that course correction is it doesn't require you to have 1/12 of the fund balance at the end of a budget year. It requires you in the budget process to create 1/12 fund balance. And then you can dip below that throughout the year, but then you recorrect the following budget cycle. But yes, we do have more than 1/12.
Gotcha. Thank you also for the clarification.
I think that's actually a really important clarification, not just for those of us up here, but for anyone watching also, is because the importance is the budgeting process. It's a guideline, it's a guardrail for us, the board, and the financial manager at the start of the budgeting process. So I think thank you. Okay, student advisory votes, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. All those in favor of approving memorandum 2324-13, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. The memorandum has been passed. The third and final item on our new business, memorandum 2324-14, approval of the highly capable annual plan, policy 2190. Mr. Pullman, can you give a brief description of this?
Yeah, I would. Before we have Principal Richards talk about how we're going to use these to improve the student experience in South Woodby, OSPI is changing the way their highly capable program is operating. In the past, it's always been an I-grant. We'd go in, we'd fill out our program plan about what we're doing with the money, how we're spending it, how much we're spending in categories. They're now transitioning, and there is no I-grant for highly capable at this time. So it's impossible to create a plan that we will submit. They're moving to what they call a smart sheet, which basically is a spreadsheet that after you spend the money, you go in and you plug dollar amounts into categories, which is something they've done with the federal dollars. So at this point, there is no official plan that normally we'd download from iGrants and say, this is what it's all about. It's not available, probably won't be available to the spring. So OSPI is fronting the money up front, and then we'll ask at the end, how did you spend it? Which is kind of what they're moving to in a lot of their programs. But Principal Richards has done a really good job this year of identifying, new opportunities and ways to expand upon the program, which is much more than we've done in the past. So I'd ask her to talk about that.
Thank you. It's really been exciting for me to have this opportunity, first of all, to begin to learn about our HCL program, to see the good work that's already been happening, and then how we can expand upon that work. We have a wonderful team of folks. Tracy McKnight is our teacher on the ground, working directly with the students. And really what I'm loving about her work is that she really looks to the individual needs and interests and strengths of the students in the program. So it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all program, which is exciting for us. Also, Erin Gutzmer and Sonia Ringsrud coordinate our assessment K-12 for the HCL program. And then Lindsay DeMotts is our teacher of record. And she has really done some incredible things this year with we're trying to, we identify with the Nagliari, and hopefully you all had a chance to kind of read a little background on this document that I put together after some questions from Director Greenherron. But we changed, I think it's been 2 years now that we changed to this new assessment. And so we're identifying this is about the top 95%, which, not counting the high school students, comes to, I think it's a little over 30. I didn't do my exact count today. I apologize for that. But we know there's many, many children who have gifts and strengths and talents that aren't captured. And we're seeing this test, and this is our sense, but we're going to be diving a little deeper into it, is capturing more kids who have that math, science strength. And we're a little worried we may not be getting as many with the verbal, the writing. So Lindsay is developing some programs where we're putting together materials. In fact, she presented at our staff meeting today to provide enrichment materials to teachers that they can work with children in their classroom who need that extra boost, who need that enrichment. She's also started a writing club, and will be being involved in some young authors programs that are here in this ESD 189 area. So what questions do you have for me? I may not have all the answers, but if I don't, I will find them, because I am, like I say, just coming up to speed on the program.
Well, yeah, thank you for the thorough answer to the question I wrote in for ahead of time. Just for the record, I will just ask it, even though you already answered it, which is, looking at an equity lens at this program, how are we making sure we're identifying the highly capable students in the district, regardless of their background? And yeah, the answer, which we can now see on the screen, is a very thorough answer to that question.
And one of the reasons that we moved from the COGAT assessment to the Nagliari assessment was for that reason, a part of it. Absolutely. Anything else?
I really appreciate you putting the information up on the agenda that you did, that whole interview with Dr. Nagliari, explaining the purpose, the cause, the purpose, and the method behind developing this. It was fascinating and helps reassure me that the district is doing what it can to find students who are gifted, no matter what their background may be.
Exactly. That's the work. And we'll have a more thorough when it's our time to come with students and present on the actual program. That'll be the fun part.
Absolutely.
Look
Thank you.
forward to that.
Don't see any more comments or questions from the board. So we'll move on to student advisory votes, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. All those in favor of approving Memorandum 2324-14, approval of the highly capable annual plan policy 2190, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. The memorandum has passed. Thank you very much. We are now through our new business action section and on to reports. We go first to our financial and enrollment report with Mr. Poolman.
So this is the first month of our new fiscal year. We're in the 23-24 fiscal year, runs from September to August. So first we'll talk about enrollment. And we are actually in our second enrollment month, October and September. So year to date, we are at 1,040 basically in our basic education program and about 66 in our ALE program, for a total of 1106.03. We had budgeted 1106, so we're fairly close to where we thought we'd be for that. The transition to kindergarten, we did not budget for, but we do have 16 students in there. Again, but we also didn't budget for the expenditure of the program. It should offset itself. Special education has about 6 more students than we had budgeted. Again, The budget is a year-long September through June number that will be constantly updated every month. So these numbers will change as we go through that. The CTE or vocational program at the high school has about 67 students or 61 students in it currently. We budget 67. Running Start, a little more than we've seen in the past, about 38 and a half. And our bilingual program has about 11 students in that particular program. Just a quick comparison to previous years and also broken down by the different grade groups. You can see that the K-5 program is steady at about 463, the 6-8 program at 281, the high school 912 program has about 340, and South Woodby Academy has another 22, which gives us our 1122, which is 16 more, but that's the TK transitional to kindergarten program makes that difference in there. And then just a quick look at the different grade levels, and you can see, you know, which grade levels we may be up or down compared to previous years. Kind of look at that, and you can see that the lower levels are lower than they've been in the past. And well, it's pretty much across the board. It's kind of the exception rather than the difference when we see a grade such as 5th grade that has more now than they've had in the past, but most of them are substantially below. And if you have questions, just stop me as we go along. And then this is just by month, and the red is this current year. And you can see that it's definitely, you know, less than we've had in the previous 3 years. And we'll see this throughout the entire year, I'm sure. Just an 8-year look at where we are by month. And this is what I use when I do enrollment projections, is I look at past history to try to predict future numbers. And you can see that, you know, we are substantially down from where we were a year ago, roughly 45 FTE, which is what we expected based upon the graduation class and the number of kids we see coming in, that type of thing. And then the next one is just a graphical look at our enrollment during that time frame. And you can see that this year is last year was a fairly leveling period, and then we take a drop, but this has happened throughout this history. If you kind of go back and look, you'll see that there's 3 other periods that look very similar, and then we take another change. You know, looking at this, I would predict that next year is going to be another one of these leveling years, not quite as much as it was this year, but different. Now we move into the financial. So this is September. We're not going to have a lot of information because it's the first month. Our revenue and expenditure in September is very similar, about $1.5 million in revenue, about 1.6 million in expenditures. You can't see the dots basically that happened in September because there's no line yet, but revenue is right where we were last year. It's, you know, within a few $10,000 or something. Expenditures are down from last year. It's a little black dot above the green, so it's substantially below, but some of that is for a couple of reasons. One is we have a budget reduction. We did reduce costs. And the other part is the MSOCs fluctuate from month to month, depending upon when we get our builds in. Next. This is just a revenue to expenditure comparison. The blue and red is last year. You can see the little yellow dot is our expenditures this year, which is below the red from last year. It's about 1.6 million compared to 1.87 million last year. And then the revenue is about the same. It's 1.5 to 1.49. So very similar revenue projection. Budget status. It's our budgeted revenue of 20.7 million, year to date 1.5. Expect to collect a little over 19.2 million in the coming 11 months. And our budget for expenditures is $21,287,990. We're at $1,573,000. We do have encumbrances of $15,905,000. So that'll give you a percentage in a moment of where we are with that. And our fund balance is a little over $5 million at this time. So above that 1/12. Next. So here's where we are with encumbrance. So you can see that MSOCs, which is materials, supplies, and other costs, your non-employee costs, we're only at about 18.4%. And that's because a lot of that stuff builds throughout the year. We don't encumber a lot up front. Payroll with the encumbrances, about 95% of the budget. So predominantly what's left is additional hours, sick hours, vacation hours, all those additional things that are not contracts. So our total expenditures year to date that we know is about 82% of our budget at this time. Balance sheet, assets and liabilities, just another way of looking at, we look at it as revenue and expenditure was also assets and liabilities, but it still comes out to that little over $5 million fund balance. Fund balance, the little green dot over on the top there. So it's a very healthy fund balance for this time of year to start with. We had planned to spend down a lot more fund balance last year than we did, but enrollment was higher than we had budgeted. And so that allowed us to almost balance last year. Not quite, but we got pretty close. So that was a big benefit. We expected to be about $1 million lower at this time than what we are.
And we expect to see that line going more down than the last couple of years as we're drawing down fund balance.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes. And this is just our revenue. Again, it's only 1 month, but you can see the property tax collection is lower than it has been in the past. Might be timing when people pay their taxes. Could be a variety of things, but it's there. The local revenue, this is the one thing that I find encouraging is that, we're at $76,000, which we're back to where we were in 2019-20 pre-pandemic. So that basically tells us that the community center is doing a good job of collecting, the rent.
Does that also have to do with opening more space at the South Campus and getting additional revenues from there?
It's all those things.
Yeah.
It's any rentals that we have, and it's anything that we do within the school. Part of that is also that, food service for a few years was free because of federal dollars. Now people are paying again, so that the local dollars go in there, those type of things. So there's a variety of things that get there, but it's just good to see it back at a healthier amount. And then our state general and special purpose, again, those are basically enrollment based dollars. So you would expect that they would go down as enrollment decreases. But because of the IPD or the COLA increases, which is fairly large, it does boost it a little bit. So it affects that. And then there's in September, there's very little federal money because we spend it in September and we claim it in October. So unless there's things such as the supply chain assistance, that's predominantly most of what that is something that the OSBI front loaded us with, and then we have to spend it over time. And then this is a breakdown, and this is where really the budgeting process exemplifies where we're spending our money. Because as you know, we went through a process where we made reductions, and you can see that salaries in both certificated, classified, and the employee benefits that go with those are lower than last year, even though you would expect that IPD would have increased those costs, but because of the changes we made in the budget process, you see that we're spending less money. And supplies and services, again, so early, that's a timing thing, I think, more than anything else. And then quickly, the other funds, capital projects, we had about 2.3 million at the end of August. About 35,000, that's all levy funds have come in so far. We spent about 60,000, so we still have about the same 2.3 million to spend this year in technology and in capital projects. There's lots of projects going on. It's just these projects sometimes take time. Debt service is a little less than $1,500 in there. There is no payment due until December. This is the last year that we will actually use debt service to pay for our local program loan, which was the energy retrofit we did about a dozen years ago. It will be paid off as of June. So we will transfer money from the capital projects in November to cover that last payment. ASB currently has almost $97,000 in it. So it's getting back to a healthy point. The transportation vehicle fund, we're still waiting on the electric school bus. We have the charging station installed at the transportation department. The bus is expected to be here in December. So that will draw this down by about $400,000 once that bus actually shows up. And then the private purpose trust fund is the funds we have for scholarships that have been donated by a wonderful community. And there's about $806,000 in there, and we only spend the interest on that. We maintain the principal at the wishes of the donors so that it would be a thing that would be here for perpetuity. I think that's pretty much it, unless you have questions.
My questions and comments were answered during it. Anything else? Okay.
As always, very helpful and thorough. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pullman. We'll go to the student report.
It's been a very eventful past month, which has been really nice. The fall sports are wrapping up. We've had a bunch of senior nights in the past few weeks, sports going to districts and conference. So that's all been really fun. And then the winter sports seasons will be starting soon. A few 2 Wednesdays ago, we had the PSAT and SAT. So a lot of kids had their first opportunity to take a standardized test, which is always a fun thing to do. We have our Veterans Day Assembly coming up on November 9th, I believe is when we're doing it. And we're also doing a sock drive with that so people can donate socks to veterans in our community. A bunch of clubs are up and running. Firstly, we have Model UN, which is attending an overnight conference in November. We have 13 delegates attending, which is the most we've ever had, and that's super cool. It's a big mix between members who have never participated in a conference to members who have been in the club for 4 years. So I think it'll be a really good group of kids going, and that should be really fun. There's also going to be a bake sale for Model UN this week, and Queer and Trans Club is holding a bake sale next week. So lots of opportunities for kids to get good snacks during lunch. National Honor Society is up and running. They're changing the format this year to follow more of the national guidelines a little more. And there's going to be opportunities for students to create their own little passion projects within the community and school, which I think is a really cool opportunity for students in the club. And it'll be cool to see what kind of projects people want to create. And then Interact Club is doing a toy drive this Christmas for kids on the island who may not have access to different gifts during the holiday season. So that's a really cool opportunity for us to donate. And then they're also continuing on their monthly book moving at the library. So one Saturday a month, the Interact Club will be at the Freeland Library, and they just help move books from storage to the library, which is really cool that they have a monthly thing to help out the community.
Down in the middle school, I talked to some ASB students. Basically, not cross country, but middle school sports are finishing up. Most of them have by now. The middle school ASB has adopted a huge theme of just inclusivity throughout the ASB. They have 2 big projects they're working on right now, which is the Harvest Hangout and the Anti-Bullying Assembly for Anti-Bullying Month coming up. Both of these have a theme of inclusivity. Like from what I know, the middle school, they planned their Harvest Hangout to have opportunities for 6th graders to be able to make sure they can feel included and welcome there. They also have different rooms where it's going to be like board games, some other music rooms, and just things that everyone can participate in, which I think is really fun, along with their anti-bullying assembly, which is really cool. And they're all really excited for a bond to possibly pass because they want new buildings.
At the elementary school, there's going to be a book fair in December, and I know a lot of people always love the book fairs. They're also going to have their Veterans Day Assembly coming up in a few weeks. And something I'm really looking forward to is the mentorship program. So starting next Tuesday, the leadership class is going to go down and help out with the elementary school kids. So I think that's going to be a really fun opportunity for the high schoolers and the elementary schoolers to interact and just be in the same environment and help each other. And I'm really looking forward to that because I get to participate this year. So I think that's going to be really cool. And we're going down on Halloween, so we get to see all their costumes.
Continuing on the elementary school, they have the Orca store opened up, which is where they get an opportunity to spend their Orca bucks and stimulate real world situations with money, which is really cool. Clubs and other activities have started up and are also starting soon. I know from my sister, that couple have already started and some are coming soon. But yeah, the ASB had their first meeting of the year, which is really exciting, and I'm excited to see where that's going.
Thank you very much. I love hearing what's going on at all levels. And I really appreciate how you bring more than just the sports, which is what happens at a lot of districts. You hear sports and big events, and you're talking about what students are talking about, what matters to them. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing. I love the breadth and depth of the information you provided across all activities and all age groups. I really appreciate it.
I'm trying to remember. I just thought of it now. Director Downs had a request for something at the end of the last meeting. I think.
If I recall correctly, it was more information about goings on at the elementary school.
Yes.
Was that what she asked
And you'll
for?
have it.
And you
Thank you.
provided, yeah.
I think that's all we've got. Okay. Mr. Pullman, I'll turn it over to you for the superintendent's report today.
Yeah, I have no idea what the superintendent report was supposed to be, but I see we have the WASDA Board of Distinction up there, and I'm sure the superintendent would have wanted to congratulate you on receiving that award. It is actually very prestigious. And what it really does is it acknowledges the hard work that a board puts in to become a high functioning board that does really great work in their community. And I think that the superintendent would have echoed the fact that it was well deserved and that, you know, this is an excellent board with the adult members, the student board members, everybody contributing to really help our district move forward in a lot of different areas. And so I think it would be just a thank you for the work that you're doing and for the work you're going to be doing. Other than that, I have no idea what she had planned to talk about because I haven't seen her for a while.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the kind words and encouragement for us to continue to do well in the future. We'll move on to board comments or report. Anything from?
Well, I just want to express some gratitude for Susie Richards and her team down there at the elementary school for opening the opportunity for kiddos to participate in clubs. I've been able to be part of that cohort of adults coming in and learning from kids about what they want to learn. In our case, putting on my civilian hat at Whitby Children's Theater, we, myself and my board president, come every Friday and we do drama club, and we just have a blast. And last Friday we did improv, and the kids had so much fun. And so, yes. So just wanted to share some appreciation and some gratitude and just those young leaders. And, also thank you for sharing elementary school stuff with us as well, because you're doing great work down here. And it's just so fun to be part of that community once a week. So thank you.
I just want to remind everybody to vote since this is the last board meeting before the election. Please do your civic duty and make sure your voice is heard. There might be some names you recognize on the back of the ballot, but I really urge you to pay attention to what's on the front of the ballot, some very important issues facing our community. So please get informed about ballot issues and candidates and make your voice heard. Thank you.
Thank you all. I believe that's everything. This meeting is adjourned. Good night.